All right, hi everyone. Nixops here. You're on base. With me today is Ergo. We're going to be talking about chain forensics analysis tools to peel back nonsets as well as shit talking. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ergo and let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about his project with the Samurai Wallet OXT team and the work with Lawrence and everyone else. So, go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me, Nixops.
Thanks for coming
I'm
on.
pretty happy to be
Second
here.
time.
Yeah, second time's a charm. So I guess we'll start off with a little bit about me because I'm gonna guess that a fair bit of your listeners aren't quite familiar with me. I'm not a developer. I'm kind of just a regular guy that got absorbed into Bitcoin, basically in the last year or so. Like a lot of Bitcoiners, kind of came to it from a libertarian gold bug perspective, and came out the other side of the 2017 moon phase, um, and kind of watched as the world slowly started to go to shit. Um, and from there, it kind of started to hit home, kind of what Bitcoin really is all about. Censorship, resistant transactions. Um, and from there, I basically started hanging around some of the Samurai Wallet guys in their Telegram chats. And for those of you that don't know, Samurai Wallet is a privacy-focused Bitcoin wallet. And they have quite a bit of conversations about stuff that you kind of don't hear from mainstream Bitcoin Twitter or Reddit or wherever. There's a little bit of a focus on crypto anarchy, and just general, um, I guess, non-compliance. And those guys talk, and emphasize quite a bit, Bitcoin's on-chain privacy, and some of its weaknesses. About a year and a half ago, maybe at this point, 2 years almost. Um, coin joining on Bitcoin got a good bit easier. We got a couple of alternatives, for non-custodial coin joins, and the Samurai guys talked about some of the shortcomings of the other implementations. Um, and instead of sort of taking their word for it, I basically decided that I should figure this shit out on my own. The Samurai guys had built a pretty robust tool set. We've got oxt.me, the block explorer, and kycp.org, which is Know Your Coin Privacy tool, which shows sort of additional transaction privacy leaks. And from there, I started following some of the existing CoinJoin implementations. Um, I guess basically right around this time last year, actually to the day. I watched as unknowingly, at least at first, the first plus token transaction hit Wasabi, at least that I was aware of. Wasabi is a chow mein style coin join, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, and from there, things just kind of accelerated. I started taking notes about how much volume was going through the coin join. Um, did a first stab at a little bit of chain forensics, evaluating what Plus Token was up to, and then a little bit after that, I guess a couple individuals had taken an interest in my research, and look at some of the market impacts of Plus Token. And from there, I kind of picked up the skill set, a little bit of chain, analysis, chain forensics using OXT, and the Samurai guys decided to take me on, at the beginning of this year.
Awesome. Hey, one thing I wanted to kind of bring up is that, a lot of people's false assumptions is about, like you had mentioned, the anonymous use of Bitcoin, but a lot of people don't understand between anonymity and pseudo anonymity. And so, like, I've discussed it a number of times, but maybe you can highlight it and maybe a better explain like I'm five instead of the way I do it, which is, apparently some people miss that kind of detail about the important difference between what true anonsets are and pseudo anonymity, because there's a lot of misconception because people believe that just because you use Bitcoin and you get KYC lists, that there's no way of tracing it to you. But a lot of people also don't understand about dress reuse, that kind of thing. Can you kind of hit a highlight point on that?
Yeah, so I guess Bitcoin went through a couple phases. You were there early. You were
Yep.
with the Tinkers, and then we had the anonymous crypto for dark market, buying drugs on the Silk Road.
Who would ever
That
do
turned
that?
out to that narrative at least turned out not to be true. It was never really technologically true. Satoshi always kind of knew that, addresses were pseudonyms and not, not anonymous, right? So when you look at a Bitcoin transaction, uh, a transparent address is used to make a payment and a transparent amount to another transparent address. And so those addresses and those amounts, those transactions are easily observable on the blockchain. Anybody with a full node or access to a block explorer can figure out, basically what the UTXO set looks like and who's been paying to who. Well, and which addresses have been paying to, which other addresses. And so, addresses are pseudonyms. They aren't, necessarily your identity, right? It's not my bank account, not my, my address. It's not tied to that, my home address. But, each user's wallet, generates a set of private keys, which will generate a set of addresses. And those addresses, could be related to a person, right? And, especially with Bitcoin, it's important, right? Those addresses and those transactions are transparent. The blockchain is visible. You have to then take, that blockchain data, that pure blockchain data, and try to correlate it to another human being, from addresses to a person. And that usually takes some idiot posting something on social media or, it could be even worse than that. So again, Bitcoin transactions are pseudonymous. Addresses, represent someone making a transaction. We don't necessarily know, who that person is.
Yeah, of course. And so, I always hit on the importance of this, but like a lot of people don't really understand, why someone should care about it, right? So, like, just like you, I mean, in the early days, when we did mixes, we had to generate our own keys with different wallets, and they weren't really clear mixes. It was more like you literally were creating a new wallet, a new address, and you created like hundreds of them in an attempt to like basically create a dusted enough tag so that no one could try to derive where it came from. But clearly it was still legible. It took a lot of work. Nowadays, like with the way with the way Whirlpool works, you actually have entropy and you have anon sets, and it takes mixing the UTXOs a lot easier. And like I said, whenever we were doing it in the early days, it was more like you just sent from a different address or a different key and hoped that it was not distinguishable based on other activity and or someone pointing it out in fucking IRC or something.
Right, right. Yeah, so, now we have these chow mein style coin joins, which are, trustless. They're not the same as mixers, like in the traditional sense. A lot of people hear the word mixer, and I often use the word mix as just a generic term for kind of an obfuscation transaction. There are two styles of mixers. The first one, is maybe three. The DIY Nixops style, mixing that he and the boys used to do. Then there were the custodial tumblers, right? And those, they took possession of users' keys, right?
Yep.
You had to send them your coins and hope that they would give it back to you. And they would basically, take your UTXOs, put them into a shared wallet, and then hopefully return them to you.
Yep.
There weren't necessarily any mathematical guarantees. You're operating a shared wallet. It's basically like sending a bunch of coins to an exchange. Once they go to an exchange, all you see is exchange. On the way out, you don't know, nothing, right? That's basically how the tumblers work. And now we have these chow mein style coin joins, which, are trustless. We don't have to, hand over, your private keys. You don't have to give the coins to the coordinator. It's I'm going to try to break it down a little as simply as possible, but basically, the way that these coin joins work is, users, they connect under, a certain Tor identity. They provide their inputs, they register their inputs, then they connect again through a separate Tor identity, register their outputs, and then contract, the transaction's built and, paid back to the user. And to get specifically into kind of how the anonymity of this stuff kind of works, Nixops mentioned, the two terms before, anonymity set and entropy. And those are two of the most sort of widely used privacy metrics, just kind of in general. Anonymity set can be defined as indistinguishability from a set. And so what that means is that when you and a bunch of other people take part in a coin join transaction, you all get returned identical sized outputs when you're done. And so the number of identical, at least in the most basic sense, the number of identical outputs from that coin join is your anonymity set. So if Nixops and I, hop into a whirlpool transaction, there's 5 of us participating. We'll create the transaction and we'll get 5 equal outputs on the way out. And that's just for that single mix. We could talk about some of the complexity of how whirlpool anonymity sets work, but that's just the most basic kind of way to think about it, is the total number of identical outputs in a coin join. And then the Samurai guys have taken it sort of one step further. And again, this is a lot of the work of Laurent T, TDev, and Zero Leak. And they've focused on the concept of entropy, which, try to keep it not super technical. But
Yeah, of course. Like I was about to say, let's not necessarily dive into different types of entropy, but let's try to keep it like on the shallow end. I mean, I know you and I could go into deep talk about how entropic data is important for not just in mixing, but also with key creation, that kind of thing. But let's try to keep it ELI 5 for this if we can.
Yeah. So with entropy, you can just kind of think of it as how homogeneous are the mixed participants. So an ideal coin join transaction would have identical sized inputs and identical sized outputs. So like in a whirlpool transaction, for example, there's 5 users, and there's a couple different pool sizes, but the smallest is the 0.01 BTC pool. In an ideal coin join, 5 of us would get together. We would create a coin join with 5 0.1 inputs and 5 0.1 outputs, but that doesn't work necessarily because somebody has to pay the miner fees. And so at least with Whirlpool, is that they've tried to build a coin join that is as close as possible to that ideal coin join. And so again, that kind of gets back to how homogeneous are the inputs and the outputs. We want to get as close to identical as possible. And when you do that, it sort of minimizes the additional privacy leaks that are kind of surrounding that that coin join transaction.
All right, awesome. I hope everybody learned from that. I mean, it's something like those of us that use it every day have kind of figured out. And, Samurai and TDev and all those guys have been doing great work with that. So, one of the more interesting things is a lot of people aren't familiar with the OXT project, like at all, and what's being done. Like outside of a couple of groups that we're both members of, Telegram, most people do not know much about on-chain research or like specifically what it can be used for, both as an authoritative attack vector and even like jokingly we made you made the comment about the Twitter hacker and some of the bad mixes that are going on with the use of a certain other mixing service or what should you call it? Oh yeah, another transactional service of obfuscation. Let's just refer to it as that.
Yeah, we can call it that.
Yeah. So I mean, like what? So what's the goal of the OXT project, and what the OXT Explorer is trying to showcase for those that are uninitiated, so that in a moment we could start kind of looking at some transactions and maybe fuck around and show some of this stuff out to people.
Yeah. So OXT stands for the Open Explorer tool. I'd have to go back and check what year it was started, but I think it was either 14 or 15, somewhere around there. I remember actually using it at the time and going, I don't get this. And now, I use it all the time. But anyway, OXT is the Open Explorer tool. It was created by Laurent T, who's a talented blockchain analyst, and he basically built the block explorer that he wanted to do the types of blockchain analysis that he needed to achieve. At the time, well, let's take a step back first. I mean, if your users or listeners are unfamiliar, a block explorer is basically just a fancy web browser UI that queries a Bitcoin node, someone's node, and will return, blockchain data, right? If you could plug in an address and, for that address, it'll tell you how many transactions were sent and received. Or you could plug in a transaction and it'll show the inputs and the outputs. So again, that all pings some Bitcoin node, but, and all the data is on the blockchain, but you kind of have to take it and make it kind of usable, right? If you just, fire up your, Bitcoin CLI and try to, get some transaction information, you're looking at terminal outputs and it's not really useful. So, Laurent, built OXT as basically a platform to do the analysis that he wanted to. And it's got a couple features that most other block explorers don't have, right? It will do some privacy metrics. It'll do address reuse, right? It'll do entropy, which we talked about. That's that sort of coin join property. And it has a clustering algo, which, for those that don't know, a cluster you'll often hear, or a wallet, not necessarily just an address, is uses the merged input heuristic to try to lump multiple addresses, into the same wallet or the same user. And, basically the way that works is that when a transaction uses all of the addresses used basically as inputs for a transaction can sort of be assumed to be owned by the same person. And there are different flavors of that algorithm, but basically the concept is that the person that controls all those private keys for those inputs has to have been part of that transaction to spend those coins. So that's kind of where clustering comes from. And then one other feature is to take the clustering a step further. We have some labeling that we do. You can label an address, you can label a cluster based on additional information that you see. If you interact with some service, let's say you're operating a mining pool and you get paid out from an address. You might be able to annotate that as slush pool, for example. We'll take all that data into account and maybe formally give that entity an annotation. And the last and probably most important feature that it has is a transaction graph, which we'll get to show everybody in a little bit, because that's kind of, it takes that inputs and outputs and makes it visual. And most people can grok it pretty quickly once you run through a couple goes. So that's kind of the overall OXT kind of theme. And we've taken it a little bit of a step further this year with OXT research, which is kind of where I come in. Laurent helps, TDEV helps, but we've kind of taken this kind of to the next level, which is shit happens on the blockchain, right? And
Yes,
it's probably not good to have chain analysis and their ilk, the surveillance companies getting to kind of control the narrative. And if we sort of step up, we can do sort of our own analysis to kind of challenge them a little bit. Just one of the many ways that we're trying to push back against them. So that's kind of the overall view of OXT and kind of block explorers.
Awesome. And like, I agree with everything on the side of like pushing back. A lot of people don't realize that in order to create sophisticated tools and anti-surveillance techniques, a lot of times you have to figure out how these companies are gathering this information and what access to tools they may have already created we have no insight into, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people just assume everything in this space is completely free and open source, and that's kind of a misnomer, because there's a lot of proprietary software, and Bitcoin allows for that due to the fact mainly because of the MIT license. And you can also, as long as you're not messing with certain aspects of the node, you can actually run your own node version that's different to do further analytic data and collection and things like that. Because as long as you're not messing with the actual ledger itself, the peer software can be modified accordingly. And I think that's often a misconception, right? There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I API checked it. Yeah, well, that's fine, you API checked it, but how easy is it to, again, change the variable and tell you that, yes, this is the version I'm running? How are you going to fact check it? You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I find it hilarious, and I know you do too, even though you're not a developer, or not necessarily a developer per se, but you probably find it funny that most people have this assumption that everyone's being a good actor and is running good software. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
in the early days, we had that problem too. I mean, like, a lot of people didn't realize that it was huge in the point that like literally there were people you couldn't trust running the same version even though they were telling you it's the same version. There's no way to actually check it unless you can validate the SHA sum of the binary they're running. Most people aren't going to give you truthful information about what they're running if they care about their OPSEC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's, you could almost take it a step further, you know, like if you just look at it through that kind of privacy lens, right? You know, everything on the blockchain is transparent. Everything about the software is transparent. Everything about, you know, everything in Bitcoin is basically transparent. Not just, you know, how does a core node work? You know, you can go and you can pick apart a you know, a coin join algorithm because they've published how it works, right? And do you think that chain analysis and you know, people who are paid to take that apart are going to tell you that they could do that? Fuck no, right?
That's their money. Like that's what a
Right.
lot of people don't understand. That like, so I love the fact that most everyone in this space has this idealism of like free and open source software. It's got to be open source. Cool. But they forget that there's actual businesses, and businesses aren't super fans of open source. Now, you will see a lot of businesses use a GPL v3 to guarantee some future iterations. That information has to be shared, that kind of thing, to kind of keep it open for everyone. But there's also a lot of MIT licensed code that's being repurposed, and people don't understand what that means, right? So, like in the world of software licenses, MIT is same as was it BSD2 and 3 clause. Basically, you just got to tell people that, you know, here's the code if you want it, change it, distribute binaries. I don't really give a fuck. It's just shipped as is, no warranty. I'm not liable, right? And I think a lot of people forget in this space what that fucking means, because a lot of them aren't software engineers, and a lot of them don't understand the difference between, you know, one open source license versus the other. And so like because of that, they don't understand business software. So going back to like what you're saying, these analysis companies are not open sourcing their software, and they're not going to, for every damn good reason. It doesn't make sense for them to. Their goal is to profit off the code that they've written. That code, sure, may be utilizing Bitcoin, but just like Lightning Network, it's not Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Sorry, I had to throw the jab in there to set myself up. You know, fuck Lightning. So one question I do have is OXT able to do the? I know you guys are mainly focused on layer one. Has it transcended into garbage dumpster fire level yet, or no?
So, you know, we don't take a look at, you know, Lightning yet. I mean, you know, Laurent is a very talented developer, a
Yes,
very
he is.
talented analyst. So, you know, I don't want to put kind of words in his mouth and, you know, speak for him, but, you know, from my interactions with him, you know, I think that if, you know, they set their mind to it, they would come up with something. Now, we could argue about what that is. I mean, people are actively attacking Lightning now, right? We see papers come out from time to time with, you know, some issues where somebody figured out, you know, some
Exploit or some way of
exploit,
blocking
right?
a channel or locking someone's funds up for 2 weeks. That guy, I felt bad for that poor guy with the 4 Bitcoin that was locked up for like 3 weeks.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, it's only a matter of time before this, you know, veil of, you know, Lightning Network being impervious, you know, kind of comes down to reality. Not going to say that it's going to be, you know, awful, but, you know, it sort of is like the meme that, you know, Bitcoin went through, you know, anonymous cryptocurrency for buying drugs in the darknet. Right now, Lightning is a privacy solution. It's the fix all for everything. And, you know, a lot of that sort of remains to be seen. You know, a lot of that just has to do with how new it is, right? And the same thing applied to Bitcoin in the beginning, right? There was nobody really watching the chain. Nobody had a cluster for Silk Road. You know, it was like there was nobody. You know, it was basically, I don't, you know, for lack of a better term, anonymous. You know, it's not true, but
It was pseudo
you know,
anonymous. I mean, like
it was
literally,
pseudo-anonymous.
it still is
And
pseudo
nobody's
anonymous.
looking, right? But now people are looking, right?
Yeah.
And it's been around for a while, and there's money to be made, right?
Yep.
And, you know, we just talked about all that. So, you know, the incentive is to, you know, continue to attack, you know, privacy solutions, right, from the government and their, you know, running dogs. You know, so it's good to see. The good thing about Bitcoin is that I think now people know that it's not anonymous, right? They know that it's trackable. So there's like, becoming a bit of a healthy respect for, what the limitations are. Like you go and you check out some of these darknet market, message boards like Dread, and they're pretty up on stuff. They're pretty into Monero now. Not that Bitcoin is gone, but weird. It's like night and day compared to the ClearNet guys that we spend our time around, like Reddit and Twitter. The guys, they just want their shit to work. They just want to be able to buy drugs. They don't
Well,
care. They
yeah.
just want to send a transaction, right?
I mean, going back to that though, let's be real. In regular software outside of this space, it is good to be highly skeptical of software, even when it's widely used. It still is. I mean, like, there's this misunderstanding that, oh, Bitcoin is great at what it does. It's, tried, true, and tested. Great. Software evolves, right? And it has to. Why? Because the need evolves. You know what I mean? Like, think about it like this. Like, a lot of people don't understand the same methodology that is used to generate public-private keys for PGP and GPG, which I talked about in the last base, like 1.2, is that people don't understand that that is actually how your mnemonic phrases are generated for Bitcoin. Like they don't understand that it's actually the same code, and it's so much so that there's a bug found in PGP, GPG. The core devs got to go look at Bitcoin because there are problems. And so like people have it in their head that like Bitcoin is this like well-oiled German machine, but it's actually duct taped, technical debt ridden fucking code. And like what huh?
I said a jalopy.
Yeah, I mean it really is and the thing is like you start talking about 10 years, 11 years without any significant huge updates to like how the chain behaves. Well, I should have been like 6 years, but still look at it like this. What if MySQL did not permit batch fucking uploads, right? Like half the damn internet would like just stop. You know what I'm saying? And like people don't realize the importance of like evolution of software and how all that works. And I think like OXT is like, is helping kind of see the importance of mixing because, and I can't wait for you to be able to show some of the stuff here for visualization. And let me know when you're ready. I'll switch that over so that we can share your screen. But I think it's hugely important for people to really understand that like this is all very different. You know what I mean? Like as even like the current mixing and things like that, and what Samurai's doing, and others, it's going to even be bigger importance for analysis companies to reverse engineer, even though the code's open source, but to reverse methods to find weak sets, what happens, how to peel back those transactions. Because like you said, going back to the darknet markets and stuff, I know a few right now, and I'm not going to say their names because I'm not giving them free advertisement, but they only accept mixed transactions. And it has to come through Whirlpool. They do not accept any Wasabi mix. And they're strong about it. I may or may not have also had a big deal about influencing them on that. But the data also had a big point in influencing. And like you said, these people are worried about buying their drugs and their money. They could care less about whether or not it's frilly or not. You know what I mean? I mean, ultimately they're on tour, so what the fuck does it matter?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, why don't we take it to doing some screen share?
All right, go ahead and
I'll give everybody a walkthrough and
yeah, go ahead and
see what we
start
got.
that, and then I'll full screen your thing. I just want to make sure it loads up correctly. Again, thank you for your patience on that. I'm still getting all of this kind of hashed out, so let me know when you're sharing your screen.
Okay, I'm getting there. All right.
All right, waiting for it to display. But yeah, I mean, that's why the reason I wanted to have you on there was to go over the OXT project and kind of like, show people some of these insightful pieces of data that, it's hard to look at if you're not a developer and you're getting raw JSON outputs, things like that. You really don't know how to manipulate that data into something useful, right? And these types of tools are critical for people to be able to visualize what data they've obtained. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I've done a little bit of scrounging through Python, and I can at least relate to that. At least a little bit. So I'm guessing you can see my screen okay?
Not yet, actually. I don't
No?
see it reflecting. Give me 1 second. I see that you have set it to screen share now. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and move you. There you go. Everybody should be able to see. There's nothing more than my voice talking there.
Okay, cool.
I gotta make
You can see
sure
my screen.
it reflects on the YouTube page. Hey, Sleeps, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Thanks everybody for joining so far. Should see it.
No comments, nobody going where you've got any issues. All right then. So hopefully by now everybody can see my.
Yep, they can.
They can.
Yeah.
They can see my screen. And I just. Yeah, okay, you got the comments. Okay. So I just popped in the an address into OXT, and this is probably where most people get hung up. Is a lot of people, they think in addresses, they don't necessarily think in kind of transactions. So you'll come to OXT, you'll pop in your address. Should load. There we go. And this is the display that you get. You've got a balance. We can see the balance over time. And we see a couple other metrics, including, activity, number of incoming and outgoing transactions, the volumes received by this address, a timing pattern of when the incoming transactions were received and when the outgoing transactions were spent, and a notes tab in case anybody has sort of, made any notes. And, you can click on this stuff and you'll get OXT says, I can't see any of this. And that's kind of the end of it for a lot of people. So all you got to do is basically just sign up for an account. Let me see.
And you guys only just verify that the email address is valid, right?
We don't even take.
Yeah, I was about to say you don't even validate it because I signed up. I had no issues under an account that should be valid.
You just pop it in.
Yep.
Pop in a username and a password. I think you can give an email address if you want, so you can recover your account.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary. I don't even have one. And so after you log in, you'll see the transaction tab finally displayed, and you'll see the sent and received volume. So that's a big issue for a lot of people. Is they'll come to the site, they'll pop in an address, and they won't see anything, right? Even though there's a lot of stuff here, they won't be able to do what they want to do. So create an account, guys. It's free. We don't take any of your information. You can give us whatever fake, username and password you want.
Use lol@u.com.
Yeah, you can even do that, and I have a couple extra little features here. You can download CSV files or JSON of some of the activity from this address. But really, sort of what people they want to go to from, okay, I take an address and I plug it in and I see that I got paid or that, that I received, a transaction, and, you should try to use your own full node for that whenever possible. But, if we really want to get down into kind of the chain heuristics, I'm going to switch it up. We're going to pop in a transaction that I have selected. And, okay, so this is a little bit of a different screen from before, right? Now, instead of showing the balance, we've got the volume, fees, UTXOs created, destroyed, new addresses, address reuse, if there is any, and transaction entropy. And that's sort of our privacy metrics. You then fire over to the inputs and outputs tab. And this is where we can start doing just like a very, very basic, chain analysis interpretation of this transaction. And so, for people that aren't aware, this is the input side of the transaction. This is the input address. And these are the two output addresses from this transaction. And when you look at this transaction, we don't know, who owns this, who controls this transaction. We don't see any of the addresses clustered at Coinbase or anything like that. But we do see something that's pretty important, and these are a couple of heuristics. We see two of them at once, which basically makes the heuristic a little bit more powerful. So on the input side, we've got an address that starts with a 3. That's a P2SH, style, Bitcoin address. And on the output side, we have a pay2 public key hash, P2, which starts with a 1, and another P2SH address, which starts with a 3. So if you look at this transaction and you just look at that, you can make a little bit of an assumption that, okay, this wallet, most wallets, they'll pay to the same, their change output to the same address type. So this, is probably the change output. And that can get even a little bit more refined when you take into account round number payments, right? So in this case, we had a 2 BTC payment and a decimal change, back to the user. So that's like one of the most basic kind of analyses that a chain analyst will do. And this is just in the context of kind of one transaction. Any questions so far?
Nothing yet, but then again, we also
good.
haven't told anyone to ask. So let me say
Okay.
that. So feel free to ask questions related to what we're talking about here. One person did ask if we ever snorted wasabi. I would say no, but I don't know about you. I have
Me
not.
personally, no.
Yeah, yeah. So, then that was oh shit, I'm doxxed. So whoever that may be. Uh, yeah. Other than that, no one's really asked questions. But again, like I said, I think a lot of people are just watching you kind of go through this, and then I think most people are going to have questions at the end. But I'm not sure. Also, I don't know why people just don't ask. So
Okay, well then I guess we'll take the next step. So the next step is going from just the single transaction to a transaction graph. So you don't need to sign up to use a transaction graph tool. If you pop in a transaction, you can go and you can open the transaction tab, and we'll wait for that to load. And we come to this transaction graph screen, which looks like there's totally nothing here, and that's because there is. This is a transaction. If you hover over it, you'll see the TXID, the block, the transaction amount, the inputs and outputs, and entropy, which is the privacy score that we've kind of talked about. The other thing you can do is you can expand the transaction details, which is this, high details open and close button. And this is the same transaction that we were just talking about. We've got, our 9 Bitcoin input, 2 Bitcoin payment interpretation, and a 7 BTC change. And so we're going to expand the transaction graph now, and there's a couple ways to do that. I'm going to show you the quick way first, which is just to double tap on the transaction, and boom, there we go. So here's our 9 BTC input, a 7 and change output, and the 2 BTC payment. And you can drag the graph around, manipulate it, do whatever you want. One of the other nice features about OXT is that if we're dealing with a very busy transaction graph, we can select just the inputs and outputs that we want. For this case, we've only got 2 inputs and 1 output. So, it's not so important, but when you're dealing with batch transactions or large, input and output transactions, your graph gets busy. So to just expand the outputs that you want from a transaction, you can do so in the transaction details tab. Just hover your mouse over the little icon, and then this should expand. There we go. So I'm going to open a couple transactions now.
I was gonna say, why don't you grab one that's been mixed, post mix out if you happen to have one that won't dox anybody.
I do. Just give me one. Just give me 1 second, because I think this is good. And so what I'm showing now is a progression. I'm following the outputs of this sequence to see if we sort of get anywhere important. And okay, we've got a cluster here. We've got another 2 BTC payment and a change. So we're sort of seeing the making of a peeling chain here. These are the change outputs that I'm highlighting, right? Mm-hmm. And the peel chain is something that, the chain analysis firms love to talk about, and we like to talk about as well. But it's not really an obfuscation technique. This is just somebody making a payment, and it winds up making a peel chain. But it's one way that actors can try to circumvent flagging or compliance software by making a series of these transactions rather than just one and all go. So that's kind of that, in a nutshell. Let me see if we've got anything else. I want to see if we can't get to a bigger cluster or an exchange.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to be able to. Experienced
listeners will know what this transaction is. I actually didn't do this on purpose. That's funny. Maybe we'll come back to that. We'll table that for now. So, I guess we can, let's see. I'll pull this one up. And we can talk a little bit about Kycp as well. So this is an example of a cluster transaction.
Yep.
And what you'll see here in OXT is we'll give it an anon. This is likely controlled by the same person. We don't know who. It's going to take some additional information to take that from, an anon number to Coinbase or Binance or whatever. And so let's see, we can actually click on this real quick and then we'll fire up a coin join. And so you can come to and search around, these clusters for any kind of relevant information. Right, we've got balance here, activity, volumes. This gets really important when you're looking at and kind of targeting some specific entities. You can pull out just the biggest volume transactions, and those are the ones that I tend to target. And there's a couple other, decent information that you can kind of use to help refine an analysis further if you want. And so let's go right now to a coin join. We'll pull up a Whirlpool coin join. And this is for the 0.05 pool. So what you'll see is all the outputs are 0.05 BTC. Two of the inputs are 0.05. Those are remixers, people that have already paid to mix. They're mixing again to get better privacy. And we've got 3 pre-mixers, and we can tell that they're pre-mixers.
Mixing a lot.
Yeah, we can tell that they're pre-mixers because they've got a little bit of they're accounting for the miner fee.
Yeah.
So let's see. Anything else? Entropy. This is where we're looking at a coin join now, and we've got that entropy metric coming up. So let's see. Technical. You can see a couple other things here. So we can pull this up in the transaction graph and see what it looks like. Okay. So we're starting to get some things, some info. Let's see. So this is an output. This is an output. These are outputs, and they're going to another mix here. Correct. Yep. Remixing, all good stuff. And so let's find this. Where's my inputs? Here we go. And so this is a TX0 transaction. The TX0 is the Whirlpool setup transaction. It takes the coordinator fee, which I have highlighted here, 5% of the pool denomination, and splits the mixed deposit basically into equal outputs that are, prepared for premixing. So these include the fee. And so this is the transaction, the setup transaction that happens before a mix. And then after that happens, all of these will just kind of go rapid fire, basically. Usually when you do your TX0, you're going to trigger a mix. Remixing will take a little bit of time, but we can get to that in a little bit. And so we've got our TX0, right? We've got our coin join, identical outputs, and we've got a post-mix spend here. And this is an example of a Stonewall post-mix spend. And what we mean by Stonewall post-mix spend is it's got basically 2 sets of identical outputs. One is the change output, and the other is the payment. And there'll be basically a dummy payment that's included. So it basically allows a user, if they have enough UTXOs, to make their UTXOs, whatever size that they need for a payment. And they get even a little bit of additional, privacy by doing a Stonewall post-mix spend. So that's kind of the, Whirlpool in a nutshell. Let's see, any questions in the chat?
Someone said we just need to go deeper, and that was kind of about it. Someone else said that Lightning is same person, Mixed Out and Peel, said Lightning's a novelty, which we kind of all agree on that. Everybody in our circles for sure. Most true Bitcoiners really feel that way. I mean, the maxis don't, but they're not real Bitcoiners. They're just cheerleaders. And it's kind of ironic, you know what I mean? Like, that they really feel that way. But, like, see, these types of tools are important. And I'm so glad that Lauren is working on this and that you were able to come on and show some of this. Because I think for a lot of people, it's a mystery of what some of this chain analytics software really looks like. But this is some of the same kind of tools that are used to identify people such as like the Twitter hacker and others, who are sending transactions to Coinbase, from Coinbase, what they're doing, who they may be because they're KYC'd. You know what I mean? Like there's there's a large number of very important pieces here that I think a lot of people really don't understand outside of like our groups of people that we associate with, right? Like all of our friends from samurai camps and everything else, like they see it and they're like, we know these things, right? But like as soon as you get outside that group, the echo chamber of the maxis, and I don't think a lot of the even the bigger account groups, like they don't realize just how sophisticated the tooling has become. Like on their end, they still think that a lot of this stuff, I believe, is still reliant on tools that are primitive to say the least. Like they're just searching JSON strings. You know what I mean? Like they don't realize that now there's actual like data modeling that is now showing stuff like what you're showing the graph, but also learning habits of clusters. Like I was privy to a piece of software not too long ago that could show groups of clusters and their spending habits, and then they were able to derive that this person was paying for a monthly subscription to an individual for rights to access an FTP server. And so, but you see, like that's the kind of things that are out there. Going back to the proprietariness, like some stuff I've been privy to because I work with different groups and like they're like, hey, what do you think of this? And I'm like, well, that's fucking scary, and fuck off because I hate the idea that it's gone to this point. But at the same time, it was the inevitable evolution, right? Like everything was going to go to that point, right? Like we have that in financial software now outside of Bitcoin, so it would only be expected to be revolving around cryptocurrency too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's only going to get, I don't want to say worse. They're only going to catch up, right? They're only going to continue to accept their government contracts and pull in that that taxpayer money and turn around and use it to build the panopticon. So one of the reasons that like I kind of picked up this flag, this kind of privacy chain analysis, banner, is that a lot of people they like have no clue, and we kind of talked about that a little bit already. Guys in the darknet market, they don't give a shit. They just they just want to buy their drugs, and I mean like even they're certainly not at the level that kind of we're at, like you just said. They're not at like the Laurent, the samurai kind of level of trying to make these things as number one user friendly as possible, number two so as robust as possible so that we can't go and pick them apart based on reading the source code. So there's a lot of still things that users just need to be aware of, like address reuse is an absolute killer. We talked a little bit about clustering and merging inputs and how bad that can be. I mean, sometimes you've got to make a payment, so you've got to do it. But try to only merge coins that come from the same source. That's coin control. Most wallets don't even have that, right? Samurai is one of the only wallets that has coin control.
And it's kind of funny that Samurai right now and the Maxi camps, they all hate them. And it's kind of ironic, even though that group is literally doing some of the Lord's work, so to speak. We do have a question in chat. Someone is saying, is it true that it's against the TNCs for law enforcement to use OXT?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out for 1 second.
I said, Mix Don't Peel is asking, is it true that it is against the TNCs for law enforcement to use OXT?
That's a good question. There are terms and conditions. Let me see. Actually, we got it down here. We can pull it up and restrictions of usage. Here's who should not be using OXT. Officers of the law, basically. Anyone investigating money laundering, et cetera, et cetera. So no, it's not okay for them to use this software. But to be perfectly honest, they're not using this, right? They all have chain analysis reactor, right? That's the transaction graph feature that chain analysis has, which has better labeling than we have because they've got relationships with the exchanges, right? They go to the exchanges and they say, hey, trusted exchange, will you give us all of your transaction data?
They'll just give them API access to the key. I mean, it's
We'll build the cluster based on what you give us, not on assumptions from blockchain heuristics. So of course they're miles ahead of us, right? They're not they're not using OXT, but that was a good question anyway. So yeah, I mean, it's really important. I mean, again, it's why I was sort of drawn to the Samurai guys, is that they're doing everything that they can to, number one, make it as easy as possible for a user to not shoot themselves in the foot, right? There's still stuff that people can do. They can still shoot themselves in the foot with CoinJoin. And that's the way most people will screw up. And the most likely way that happens is when you spend your unmixed change with your post-mix coins. So if we come back to this TX0, you can find his change output here and see what he did with it. He's not spending it with his mixed coins. He's doing another Stonewall transaction, actually. And so with Samurai, it's impossible for you to combine this toxic change output that's related to this guy's pre-mix history with his post-mix coins. The wallet won't let you do that, right? You've got to do another transaction, or you've got to use another wallet. And look, here we go, straight from Binance, right? Yeah. So there's the foot gun scenario, which gets a lot of play, right? Because a lot of users are going to foot gun themselves. They are going to take all the outputs, their mixed outputs, they are going to combine them into a single address, which is like the worst thing you could do. And then there's the next level of issues, which is the stuff that, another round of stuff that we've focused on at OXT, which is, understanding how the coordinator works to attack, the coin join. I mean, I've done it with Wasabi. I've done it with Join Market. I've introduced attacks, for, specifically how those coin joins work. And, I got some response. The Join Market guys are pretty good. Waxwing is a talented developer, and he responded. He took into account some of the stuff that we mentioned. And he's going to try to build some improvements to Join Market, which is great to see, because the stuff that we publish is intended to help the entire community. There seems to be like a complete disconnect between reality and kind of what we see and what everybody kind of thinks. And I know it's sort of maxi Twitter and Reddit and whatever. But it's just the only way to get better is to acknowledge the issues and improve, right? And if we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's so polarizing. You go to 4chan, you see under Biz or B when people are talking about Bitcoin, and you see like their discussions on like using mixing and like avoiding bad operational security, and then all of a sudden you go to Reddit and Twitter, and you see motherfuckers posting, repeated addresses so that you can identify clustering, all kinds of stuff. And you're just like, Jesus, like, why? And, the thing is like, I love recently starting to see many people starting to say they're privacy advocates and then turning around having their fucking Bitcoin address literally in their Twitter bio. And I'm just like, ugh, why? You know what I mean? Like why?
It's killer.
Yeah. It's like
totally
not only is that a tax liability, but quite literally, if simulation dev forbid, your keys become compromised. Like literally, whatever happens, you can't say that you never had the keys to it. There's literally a log in Twitter, which, by the way, Twitter will cough up logs immediately. Do not ever think that they won't cough up for a subpoena. They will give up that information in a hurry for you if it's not already being captured by somebody else involved in that case. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's ultimately one of the biggest things. Like we talk about OPSEC, we talk about all these things, and literally there just seems to be this huge disconnect, because our reality is that we know, you and I and others in our groups, as people we run with and associate with, we're aware of the dangers. Like we know they're real. We don't think for a second that if we slip up that someone's going to catch us. We know they will. Like, there are tools to do this. And a lot of people just feel there aren't enough eyes on the chain and stuff, like it's 2011 again or 2012. And like, I think they really need to wake the fuck up, because they're wrong.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I'm waiting for the moment that, a user says that their withdrawal from Coinbase is, censored. You can't send to, I don't know, whatever darknet market.
Well, I mean, it's
I
already
haven't
starting
seen
to happen though. Like literally
right.
the other
The
day.
infrastructure's there.
Yeah.
It's already there.
The other day they blocked from people sending to the Twitter hacker, and you know what? I fucking I thought that was great, but yet people still use Coinbase and rely on it. And part of the problem is that the KYC Bitcoin scene is literally making all of this even more important for people to get involved with understanding these tools, understanding how to peel back your own transactions, see why mixing is important to protect yourself, but also to protect the others you do business with, right? Like, say for example, you're buying beers at a bar and you're trying to protect them too. You need to educate them on how to properly do this stuff. Like it's not that people want to avoid paying taxes, but man, why should I have to pay capital gains tax on a $6 transaction? You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't do it on cash, except you would have already paid the taxes, but you already are paying the sales taxes and the price at the bar, right? You see what I mean?
That's right.
Like it's
Absolutely.
you're sending them $6 the value of asset or value of store of value, whatever it may be. Fuck it, you shouldn't have to pay double taxing on it, right? You wouldn't do that with cash. And Bitcoin's truly digital cash as we like to use it, then you got to take that into consideration.
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and you bring up a big point, right? Which is that we talked about this at the beginning, which was Bitcoin is pseudonymous, right? Mm-hmm. If you're posting your Bitcoin address in your Twitter bio, or let's say you're in the case of the Twitter hacker, which is the address that I actually have pulled up right now, that address is associated with you or whoever, right? This address is associated with the Twitter hacker. He tweeted it. He put it on a website. This is the scam address, and that's what the court documents call it. It didn't take me long. I took a look at it, basically the day that it happened. And if you were like probably me and Nixops, you were sitting back and just enjoying the carnage, right? And the entire time, a lot of us, we're poking fun at it, but like we wanted the kid to get away with it.
Fuck yeah, we did. I was cheering him on. I mean, I was like, I even suggested you use fucking Whirlpool, and then Samurai ran that deal, and I was like, you know what, this is fucking great. This is because literally, had he done that, it would have probably helped. But I think they did, according to the research, and you can confirm this. They did find him because he was using a Coinbase address. Is that right?
Well, so I'm still sifting through the legal documents. There's a couple people involved. There's the main mastermind who they put, threw his mugshot up, and of course they made him look awful, right?
Yeah, of course they always do.
Right, they always do, and a couple of accomplices, and I'm sort of my way through it, and they are pulling data from Coinbase. They are, they're in the one complaint against one of the accomplices. The IRS crime investigator or whoever, they found, an address associated with one of the conspirators or one of his little helpers, and they queried, for the transaction data from Coinbase that paid to that address, and then they take it a step further and they go, oh, all of these transactions that were for $250 were, part of this advertisement on OG users. So we know that this was, they don't even need a warrant, right?
Yeah, I know. It's all clear data. I mean, anybody can query against it.
Well, I mean, I think there was a, maybe not too recent, maybe about a month and a half ago, there was some U.S. appeals court, upheld that, whoever was, looking for data on some poor schmuck, they didn't have to get a warrant to contact Coinbase first. They basically just said, well, it's all on fucking, ClearNet, clear text. Everybody can see it. So no warrant needed, which is just absolutely crazy. I mean, you got to get a warrant to go usually get involved in somebody's bank account, right? And these places are banks.
Actually, so believe it or
correct me.
So actually, depending on a couple of factors, a lot of banks don't even require a proper subpoena or a warrant. Now they only require. Okay. Now a lot of banks will just cooperate. Like you can, and okay, I will go, segue into a quick story, and then we'll go back, and then once you're done with talking about the Twitter address, someone did have a question, but I wanted to say this. So I have friends who work behind enemy lines, and when I say that, I mean literally at banks. Some of them are very high up, C-levels and other, directorial positions. And a lot of branches will just cooperate with law enforcement if they come in, whether it's missing person, crime, potential, whatever. They will just ask to see financial records, and they'll print it out with no questions. Matter of fact, jokingly, I had someone who I know closely go into social engineer, ask for his friend's information without providing proof he was law enforcement, and was given a printout of his last 6 months of his associates' transactions via a certain unnamed bank. And
That's awful.
yeah, so that goes to show you that like banks are really cooperative with law enforcement, and sometimes you don't have to prove it depending on, the banks and stuff. So like you said, Coinbase is behaving like a bank because I mean they do ACH clearing, they do everything else. So the thing is like they're not having to give warrant, they're not having to have subpoenas or warrants or anything like that, like to gain access to this data or any request. And basically they just go and flash a badge, sometimes not even flash a badge, and be able to be given access to this data. That should scare people. You know what I mean? But it doesn't. Like the mass majority are just like okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's your mass adoption crowd, right? Whatever, just sign it over. And, it's a shame. I mean, I, KYC'd myself in the beginning because I didn't know any better. Nobody was talking about this stuff when I first got involved.
Well, it was
You can't go
unknown.
back.
It was unknown because most people had no idea what the fuck was even going on. I mean, I remember the first time people were talking about like, hey, KYC this, and like meanwhile I had always operated outside of exchanges and stuff because literally I was mining. So like to me it made no sense to why would you buy? Hell, I didn't even like the trading pieces of it. I was just like, well, I'm not trading on portions of a penny because that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because at the time I was working on a lot of Forex software too, and fiat, dirty fiat stuff. Still am to some level, but like it's always interesting because when you see the evolution of it, and this kind of segues into the question actually that was asked. So, Mix Don't Peel said, to what extent do we think that bag holders and number go up mentalities are pernicious, and do they open doors for creeping KYC and compliance culture? And I have to think that it does. It quite literally does. Pomp and others promote onboarding and at all costs, and I think that onboarding at all costs at the user level is dangerous.
Well, I mean, think about like the Twitter hacker, right?
Yeah.
People are like, this idiot should have used Monero. And it's really funny because if this guy had targeted Monero users, he wouldn't have gotten any coin for two reasons. One, Monero is a lot smaller of a community, but most importantly, those users are not going to be sending money to a fucking scammer.
Yeah.
This guy particularly targeted the idiots at Coinbase, right? This is exactly the type of scam that this works against these which is the mass adoption kind of crowd.
Yep.
And it's like everybody. I love my no coiners. I love my friends. I love my family. You talk to them about this stuff, about anything, right? Just like privacy in general, and they don't give a shit. Right? Their eyes glaze over, and it's frustrating. Especially for people that really care. You love your friends. You love your family. You don't want to be the Bitcoin guy that's shoving it down their throat. Because a lot of them, they just don't care, And,
yeah, I mean, how do you think I am, right? Like my family all thinks I'm fucking crazy. Like, they're like, dude, why do you use a burner phone to call me sometimes? It's like, fuck off, you know what I mean? But like once people are accustomed to it, they realize the power to it, right? Like once you can demonstrate something, just like this OXT demonstration here, once they can see that you can peel it back real easily with tools that are available, free and open source and public, it opens their eyes to see, okay, hey, you think this is cool? Wait till we have access to data that we're not privy to, that some company is privy to, that may have a deal with these exchanges or with law enforcement or with three-letter agencies that get pushed to the top of the list on you got to cooperate with them or give them an API key. You know what I mean? And that's the dangerous part. I think a lot of people really don't see that because they don't understand software. And going back to what I always say, and I sound like a broken fucking record when I say it, but fucking this shit's software. If you don't think it is, literally what we're looking at is data that was driven or created from software, and we're looking through that derived data to determine a bunch of factors about mixed outputs, where it went, processes, whether or not we could peel it back, what exchange it went to. And again, all goes back to software. And, you know, the maxi culture is that it's more than software. No, fuck no, it's just software. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. You know, it's fallible. We're fallible. You know, we've got to, you know, do what we can to, you know, educate people as much as possible. I mean, you know, not everybody's going to get to the level of detail that you and I get to, right? We're not going to be, you know, becoming a chain analysis expert, you know, on how to use these tools. But, you know, the best thing that people can do is just try to be aware. You know, a lot of, you know, maybe your listeners might only be hearing this for stuff for like the first time. And it'll seem like a bit of a foreign language, you know, and the best thing that you can do is just go pick up the tools and just, you know, experiment a little bit, hop into Telegram chats. You know, we're there. I'm around to help. I'm happy to answer questions for people. You know, and just, you know, always try to keep getting better. You know, it's like, I don't want to sound like too much of a cheerleader, but, you know, it's just, you know, gotta do what we can. And again, you know, the Samurai guys are doing, you know, are trying to do it, take on as much, you know, responsibility at the app level as possible. And that's an uphill battle. It is, but they're taking on that challenge. They see it as an opportunity. And we, you know, a lot of us are really, really very thankful for that.
Yeah, and I also think though that a lot of people fail to understand that security is not as just this one-click solution, right? Like people often think that security and OPSEC and all of these things are just like they're going to install a piece of software and it's just going to fucking help them. And the problem is that there's no silver bullet in software, right? And in security especially, right? Like it's an ongoing process. That's why, you know, you have audits. That's why you spend the time to, you know, there are huge entities that go through, you know, rigorous training and rigorous deterministic, you know, looks into how a company operates, you know, like, and everyone's like, oh, well, you know, we did this, we did the best practices, great, but like, did you really follow best practices? You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, there's a lot of stuff I do right on OPSEC and some stuff I don't. Like, you know, this account for years was kind of unknown. You know, and there's like if someone's clever enough, they may be able to tie it to my old one, which someone had came close once. But, you know, like literally that's part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like understanding that you have to evolve with the tools that are there, use the tools to your advantage to evolve your own understanding of the operational security you have, as well as being able to provide advice and information to people who really need it, you know? And that's the other thing I don't know if you saw even recently is like people are now starting to like kind of gatekeep the idea of what censorship is and whether or not people should have access to certain software in the free and open source community. And I think that's a dangerous road to go down. And, you know, like what if OXT was like, yo, we're not going to let you view it because we just feel you're not worthy based on some statement you made 12 years ago. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, taking that censorship, you know, that wrong think. And it's present, you know, it's present even in kind of the Bitcoin community. It's a shame. It's really kind of sad to see. You know, we talked about, you know, bag pumping syndrome.
Number go up only, bruh. Number go up only. Then all of a sudden, drunk people get on fucking shipmax, market sell 1,000 coins, turn around, cause the index to shift and pop their shorts, hit the double tap on the way out and go get beers. Yeah, that happens quite frequently, I might add. So, I mean, literally somebody described it. And I mean, I know you've seen my tweets before to like Huddle Not and others where like I kind of mockingly talked about it. But then like someone literally was like, yo, look, someone's fucking with the index, prep their shorts and hit them. And got all of them on BitMEX and I think it was Bit5X too. And I just kind of laughed because that's literally how easy it is. And like people think that it requires a lot, but it's not that much when you think about it. Like, considering you could cause a 30% drop for, $100,000, that's kind of silly. You know what I'm saying? Like you could devalue the entire market cap of Bitcoin for roughly about $50,000. It would do far worse than a 51% attack. Do you see what I'm saying?
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, the least illiquid shitcoin.
Yeah. Like you can literally fuck with them because like there's a lot of data that's inaccurate. So and people are like, oh, the market cap's huge. No. A lot of that data is inaccurate. We know it's inaccurate. A lot of exchanges have been in trouble for posting inaccurate data. Like you know what I mean? And I think that there's this fallacy that there's more involvement than what there is. And yes, there's a lot of involvement, but there's not going to be an explosion like there was in 2017. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people fail to understand why. And I think you understand why, because there's not new money coming from nowhere. Like in 2017, it was almost like, I'm going to say this, and hopefully no religious fanatics get mad at me, but I'm going to do it anyway. In 2017, it was like the fucking Christians going out to the far reaches of the earth to tell them about cryptocurrency. You know what I mean? Like money started flooding in from countries we ain't heard from in decades. You know what I'm saying? It's like, bam, they're now a market. They're now involved in this economic system. You're like, well, welcome to the 21st century. How are you? We haven't heard from you. But, and that kind of led to that boom. But then now the reality is set in that, yeah, there's a steady increase in price right now. But even today, there was a, $400 or $300 price drop. And people are like, oh my God, how is this possible? It's like, quite literally, it's a manipulatable market or a manipulatable, trading space. And people don't understand the ramifications of that. But circling back with the OXC, it's important to know that like a lot of the people who are really doing good market manipulation have started to use good mixing and coin joining. And the reason why is because they were starting to be identified. And while it may be an unregulated market, facts are facts, SEC's cracking down, so is the IRS. And so the SEC is seeing wild fluctuations. The IRS gets involved, and if they can use chain analytics to figure out where these coins are coming from, and like a lot of these places with options trading, they're all KYC'd. So you have to be very mindful of what practices you may or may not use. And I'm not going to go into detail, but if you've been in any Telegram group with me that I've publicly talked about, there are ways to avoid that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's it would be interesting to see CoinJoin really kind of adopted not just by the darknet market guys, the guys that just want to be able to spend privately, but to get adopted by the whales trying to save themselves from jumping from exchange to exchange. We could easily spin up a whale-sized pool, a 5 BTC pool if there was the demand for that, and it would be a beautiful thing.
Could you imagine a 25
gambling,
BTC? 25 BTC pool. I want to see that. I mean, I really do.
25. We'd start with 5.
Yeah, I know, but I want to see it move to 25. I think it would be great. I mean, but like that's ultimately the power of it, right? Like as people begin to care about these things instead of just worried about the number go up or paying their back. Like a lot of people don't understand that you can't get emotionally involved with money in order to make money. So the maxi cultism is actually kind of ironic when you think about it from making money standpoint, right? The most wealthiest people in the world do not place emotional value on money. You can't, because you have to be willing to lose it in order to take gambles to win it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So these maxis who are emotionally attached to it, like I'll never sell unless 100K, 200K, great, that's cute. But do they understand the ramifications of that in the context that if it's 200K, there's probably hyperinflation on the US dollar. So that means that Bitcoin still ain't worth more than what it is now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to come back from that, libertarian gold bug phase. I mean, I definitely went through that. I used to hang out on Zero Hedge all the time and, read all the gold bug blog posts and all that crap. And I don't know, maybe I got, that number go up out of my system, partially because I had seen, that sort of, gold bug community and how disappointed it can be to watch number go sideways for so fucking long.
I mean, like for me, number go up syndrome came out the day Bitcoin hit $1. At that point, I was like, whatever it does from this point on. Hell, I remember when it hit a penny. I was like, whatever the fuck it does at this point, like it was, the mission was accomplished, right? I mean, that's just how I looked at it. Like it held a value that some other person could truly understand, right? Like if I say, oh, well, a sat's worth, 1/400 millionth of a penny, they're like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And all of a sudden I was like, hey, 1 Bitcoin is a penny. They're like, okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it has a value. And so for me, it was like, all right, that number go up. Number went up to $1. I remember everybody in IRC cheering and all these other things. And people were like, we're fucking making it. It's done. It's beautiful. It's going to whatever. And then harsh reality sets in. It may do that, but it's going to take some time. And it's going to go up and down. And I think a lot of people also kind of have in their head that like they think they're being revolutionaries with the KYC Bitcoin. And I think you and I both agree that that's kind of a funny narrative all in of itself.
You couldn't make that up if you tried, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's absolutely crazy, completely delusional. And I mean, like I said, I can only come back to and talk about myself,
Yeah.
And like I said, I rode the wave of the 2017 bull market and came out the other side, and I was just like, man, the world is turning to a total shithole. As much as I would love to get rich, by, hoping for the moon or buying lottery tickets, there's like real problems. there are real problems out there, right now. I mean, I know you've seen it in the last couple months, particularly, right? Where it's like accelerating. Shit is just getting worse, faster and faster. And the freedom that Bitcoin enables, shouldn't be taken for granted. And that's just why I try to push this privacy stuff kind of as far as we can.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I appreciate you walking through the OXT pieces here. And did you want to go through more of this coin join here, or?
Well, since I got this one up, and again, this was not on purpose. People are going to think I did this on purpose. This is.
I'm just transitioning it over right now, so it'll take a second to reflect on the screen. But
okay,
I have you flipped over to that one now, so that they can take a look at a closer view. But I mean, they can already see it in the split view, so you can go ahead and talk about it if you want.
Okay, so this was the transaction graph that we fired up earlier. This nice long peel chain. And you could keep going back as far as you want to try to find whatever the source of this is. And this is back to March, and we're just seeing a nice long peel chain. And what we see here is a 2 BTC deposit into Wasabi. And we know this is Wasabi. And again, I swear to God, I did not do this on purpose. You couldn't. I didn't know.
Well played, sir. Well played.
They won't believe me, but I swear. And we know this is Wasabi because we've got some flavor of 0.1, denomination outputs. And what we see here is just this massive, clustering on the way out. These are all people that are just combining all of their mixed outputs into a poor privacy spend. So let's just pick on this one for now. And what you might see is 3 or 4 inputs. Yep, 3 or 4 inputs. Look at that.
Yeah.
All huddled to a nice, cold storage address. BC1 0.467 on the dot. I bet you he docks himself some further with this change, unless he paid with it. And yeah, here's. Oh no, he remixed it. Okay, good for him. So it's like this is the kind of stuff that we talk about like in the Telegram groups and stuff all the time, and it's like really hard to tell people that I understand that this is the way you want to use this. I'm not telling you that you can't use it this way, but here's the privacy, in the best practices for privacy in order, the way I kind of see it, and if you want to do what you want to do, you absolutely should do that. But like this is this is just awful. It's just some guy, he mustered up his 0.5 BTC, he ran them through the coin join, and then he consolidated them on the way out. I mean, we could pick on it further. Hopefully there's no address reuse or anything like that, but no, 5 addresses, no address reuse, so that's good for him. And maybe while we're here, we can talk a little bit about the peeling. And so we've got a nice long peel chain here, right, where we've been just clipping off little bits and pieces of BTC, right? A nice long 9 and change. This is a whole long peel chain. And when we talk about, kind of peeling in the context of, CoinJoin, it actually gains a more kind of important connotation. So this is my interpretation of a payment and change, peel chain. At some point, this guy could have taken this 9 BTC output and used it as the payment, and this output could be the change. So that would totally turn this analysis of this peel chain on its head. One of these now becomes owned by the upstream source. But with these coin join protocols, the way that they work, the way that people connect, they register their input, then they connect it through another Tor identity and register their output. The change returned in a coin join transaction is 100% owned by the corresponding input or inputs. That's the way this works. There is no, it could have been a payment. That's just the way they work now. And maybe that'll change in the future. But in the kind of the peeling context, we've got our nice 9. This is a 9 BTC UTXO. Let's see. And what you'll see if I expand a couple more, this will hopefully get a little more clear. No, you're not 6. It's got to be one of these. Yeah, it's the 5 probably. No. Actually, I don't know. I'd have to spend a little bit more time looking at it, but actually, let's see. This is this one. So, I mean, you can kind of see what I'm doing is I'm targeting the weakest links, which are the largest inputs.
Yep.
These guys are the most likely to make a mistake. They're the most likely, oh, look, so, here's another 2 BTC deposit, linked back to this peel chain that we can see kind of from this direction. So now, BC1 address, let's see. Yep, here we go. So these are all Wasabi coin joins. And, this guy was this long peeling chain, 2 BTC deposits. And now what I'm doing is I'm peeling back the peel chain for this 32 BTC UTXO. And, you can kind of start to see, okay, this first, we can see this peel chain as it sort of moves through the mixer. And we know that this output doesn't have anonymity set or anything like that. But, as we've talked about, it can be used to attack the mix. I've introduced the toxic recall attack, in the context of join market a few weeks or months ago. But the same thing applies to, Wasabi. That is, it's basically the similar scale. I'm not going to get into that. It's probably a little bit too technical.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to, I don't want us to get too deep dived into some of this because I don't want people's eyes to glaze over and be like, because so far I think it's been kind of high level enough to most people to understand, but I want to make sure that we keep it simple. And if, that way people, if they have questions, they can, hop into Telegram groups and get those answers, No,
absolutely. Yeah, that's probably good for now. I don't want to drive this too far into the ground. I mean, I'm surprised that led there. Anyway, a couple peel chains, kind of in context.
Wow. Lord. And this is all this is just clearly available for anyone to go in and check out. All they need to do is register for an account. And actually, Heddywook, there's no paid OXT account, correct?
Is he offering to pay? Tell him we'll charge him.
I mean, they'll accept your money. I think you guys do accept payment. I think Laurent will or somebody will, but only through mixed, and it's got to be non-Wasabi mixed because they care about their privacy. But yeah, there isn't a payout OXT at this time, right? And there's not going to be because I don't, to my understanding, right? Or am I wrong on that?
Well, we've discussed, providing some data to, private, services that are looking for basically trading, API data. Um, and we're looking to hopefully expand that, in the future. We've got, like right now, I'm running kind of the, the research, arm, right? Shit comes up, the Twitter guy, hacks Twitter and okay, or go track down the coins. Um, but we're kind of hoping to expand, kind of in the future. A couple things that we have coming up. Right now, OXT operates on a bit of a lag. It's about an hour behind, the current chain tip. That's just because there's so much data that needs to get crunched, that it takes a little bit of time. We're in the process of switching everything over uh, to be real time. And that should hopefully be happening in the next couple months or so. And then from there, we're gonna. I think the next plan is to fire up an Onion address for folks to, connect via Tor, which a lot of people will be really happy about. And then from there, we'll look to expand kind of some of the services that we offer. You know, OXT is going to remain open. It's going to remain free. The reports that I write, they might be temporarily paywalled for a little while. Hopefully continue to fund some of the work that we do, but then they'll be open source to the community. Anybody can go and download them and read them and learn from them.
Well,
Um,
I think that's also something that a lot of people don't understand. That free and open source software, free and open source services, it costs money, and it costs time and effort. And a lot of people really don't understand that kind of trade off, right? Like, you can be an open source developer. Most open source developers actually have a day job too because they're not getting paid to write open source software. Because it's free and open source. So a lot of businesses don't support that. Some do, but let's get realistic here. I mean, a lot of people are working their candle at both ends. I mean, I think you're one of those people too. I was that for a long time, and still am. I work on a few open source projects and under pseudonyms and stuff like that, and I balance that out between my workday and my personal time. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy. I'm not doing it, full time like some of these guys are, which is really impressive. But yeah, I mean, so we'll see where things go. We might, we'll look to maybe hopefully expand some of the analytics tools that we have, kind of going forward and see what we can't do.
Yeah.
We made a little bit of a name for ourselves recently, getting some respect from the community. Reporters asking us to do some, analytics instead of going to chain analysis, which is always, another way that we're kind of pushing back against them.
Yeah.
It's just is any little bit of credibility that we can kind of chip away from them is good for everyone. And a lot of people, they really just don't understand that at all.
Yeah, for
But,
sure.
what are you gonna do?
Hey, Hetty, what I was going to tell you, if you don't know how to access that feature, you need to look back at this video roughly about 35 minutes in, and you will be able to see where Ergo talks about how to actually sign in and start looking at transaction outputs, inputs, and then also being able to build a graph that was
Yeah,
covered
tell him he
earlier.
can DM me if he needs to.
Yeah,
I'll walk him through it.
yeah, and also DM and feel free. Is there anything else that you wanted to show with us, or I mean, how much more peeling back do we want to do?
No, let me. I'd probably get in trouble if I didn't at least mention KYCP. So let me do that real quick.
Okay.
KYCP is powered by OXT, and it's a similar transaction privacy tool. You can only put in the addresses, and what you'll see is there's a nice long list of, basically privacy and important transactions, along the lines here. We've got Wasabi, Whirlpool, Dark Wallet, a couple different example of transactions. And I just want to, plug this real quick as well, because it'll be hard for a lot of people to think about this kind of as quickly as I'm trying to explain it. But what this tries to do is it tries to relate all of the links, within basically one transaction. There's an algorithm that Laurent developed called Boltzmann, which will calculate deterministic links which basically just means that we know that these inputs were used to pay these outputs. From the CoinJoin Sudoku, it's an attack on privacy. And users, are definitely encouraged to come in and check it out. We've got address reuse on the left side over here, all from the same address, and a couple from a separate address. And that's highlighted. We've got the deterministic links, which are shown here kind of in orange. And it'll show a couple of other things. We can go back to, we'll take a quick look at Whirlpool. Let's see. There we go. And so this is what we mean by homogeneous. I know it's all green and it's all pretty and the colors will trigger some people, but what I kind of will come back to is just that there's no deterministic links in Whirlpool, and that makes you a good bit safer. So definitely check out KYCP as well.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to show before we open it up for a few questions and then wrap it up?
No, I think that's it. Let's answer some questions.
Someone wants to know if we could look at a stonewall or a stowaway.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, go ahead if you got it pulled up or if you can.
Should have. I'll find one.
Yeah, I think it's great that people have these questions. And I also find it kind of odd that people are really hesitant to ask those things in public, like on Twitter or on DMs or something. But let me reiterate this. If you don't understand something and you don't ask about it, closed mouths don't get fed. So we can't help you, or someone can't help you even from a project if you don't tell them. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Based here is get some of the groups and software and other things together with people and companies and services, that people are just genuinely afraid or they feel that they're embarrassed to have to ask questions related to them. Does that make sense? And yeah, and I get that. So the goal is kind of give it in this off the cuff, unscripted, raw format where we can, answer those questions, but also showcase some of the work that's being done in a way that makes sense for why some of us have the, stern opinions that we do about some of this shit,
So this should be showable. Here we go. Here's a Stonewall transaction. This is the same one we pulled up before.
These actions is Stonewall or Stonewall X2?
Well, this we don't know if it's a Stonewall or a Stonewall X2. They have the same on-chain fingerprint, and without any additional data, we can't know. And so again, a Stonewall is basically a transaction that will create kind of a dummy payment, and you can do that collaboratively with another Samurai Wallet user with the Stonewall X2 feature. And what you can do is you'll swap QR codes or a payment code across hopefully some encrypted chat to construct a transaction and usually to pay to a third party. So that's what Stonewall is kind of good for. And then Stowaway, which let me see if I can't find. I think I know where to find one. Stowaway is a little bit of a different tool. The Stowaway transaction is a pay join, and you may have heard of that recently. I shouldn't say recently; it's been a couple weeks now. A Stowaway transaction looks to break the merged input heuristic, that clustering algorithm, in a different way. A coin join and a Stonewall, which is a simulated coin join or a two-party coin join, breaks the merged input heuristic because it creates identical outputs for the most part, or breaks coin join Sudoku. Stowaway, on the other hand, doesn't do that, but what it does do is it involves the recipient in the payment, and so it creates a false cluster. If we look at this cluster, this is a Stonewall transaction. We assume that all of the inputs are controlled by one entity, when really they're controlled by we assume that they're controlled by one entity, but really two parties were involved in this transaction. And the other thing that Stowaway does is it hides the payment amount by involving the recipient. So that's a really kind of neat tool. It's it's not quite the same as a traditional coin join, but if you're paying your buddy at the bar and you've got some sort of loose change UTXOs floating around for that $6 beer, Stowaway is the way to go.
I cannot confirm nor deny that I use that. Just saying. I mean, that's why I keep an Android phone and an iPhone on me, right? The Android's for Samurai, the mobile mixing, the everything that I need to do when I'm doing such things. Because I use Bitcoin like cash, and I try my best to be very very much like that. And these tools definitely help. And they kind of give you the little bit of confidence in knowing, hey, and because of OXT's research and everything like that, you're able to see that there's proof in the validity of using that software, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a shameless shill for a lot of it, is because literally it works and it works really well. And I think that's something that a lot of people, I mean, oftentimes call into question is whether or not it's useful, and this is a prime example of how it's useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, it's been great, hanging around the community for the last couple months. It seems to have changed a good bit since, I first got involved maybe a year and a half ago. It's getting stronger, the samurai specific community, and it's really great to see. We got Ronin Dojo,
Oh yeah.
um, you know, Guerrero Moneta, like Whoa, and maybe some other guy named Zelko.
Maybe some
They're
other guy named
maybe
Zelko. I
some
mean, who
other
the
guy named
fuck
Zelko.
knows?
They're doing some great stuff too. Oh, and Pavel recently joined the team.
Yep.
It's really been really good to see, Samurai kind of expanding and being, as ambitious as they are. To make this shit so that you can use it as cash, so that you can do what you need to do, and hopefully your wallet can take care of most of your concerns and your privacy for you. Someday we'll get to that point. We're not quite there, but we're gonna get there.
It's getting closer, and I mean that thing is great. Heady, what kind of question? And he's asking that the collaboration with the same person over and over is safe, or should you use more?
For which type of transaction?
I think he was maybe referring to the Stonewall.
Okay, for a Stonewall, it's not. I don't think it's as big of a deal. You're gonna both have kind of those same. You're gonna wind up with basically the same kind of fingerprint of outputs. But I worry about it with Stowaway. If you just pay join with the same person over and over again, that person's gonna wind up with a single bigger and bigger UTXO, which sort of has kind of a reverse peel chain effect. So if you're doing with the next two, it's no big deal. But if you want additional people to do a Stonewall X2 with, hop in the chat, Teddy. We're like, I'm always around to do a Stonewall X2 with. If I'm awake, I'm around to do it. And a lot of the other guys will jump at the chance to do it with you. So, if you're up for it, I'll help. Max Tannehill is always a big help with that. Pavel's a big help with that. So ask, and we can fuck it up even better if we all keep doing it.
Our powers combined.
Yeah.
So he also had another question. What about the alleged address reuse case Samurai recently experienced? And correct me if I'm wrong, but that data was all wrong, right? Because it wasn't the day they announced it. I know Mr. Huddle and some other people were fucking going on and on and on, but it turned out that the person who had wrote that article actually had incorrect data about the addresses altogether.
Yeah, and it's funny, the address reuse that they consider to be address reuse would be if I receive a UTXO to an address and then spend from that address, that's considered address reuse. And that's like pure HODL maximalism, like at its finest. You should only be using an address once, and that you should never spend from it. So yeah, the data was not great. It seems like the team spent a good amount of time trying to recreate the issue.
Yep, that they did. I read the follow-ups.
And so they went to plan B, which is, okay, let's check all the data. Let's scrape the chain and see if we can't find any address reuse. And they did find some. They did find, I don't want to say a couple occurrences, go check the article, some small percentage. And again, they were unable to kind of recreate that issue. The guy that opened the issue on GitHub closed it and said, yeah, I can't replicate this anymore. TDev and the team couldn't replicate it, but that doesn't mean that, there wasn't some potential for some address use. And so what they did was they said, all right, like we got to fall back on something that we know will work, and then we'll fall back to the node, and we'll have the node prompt the user and let them know that they're constructing a transaction with accidental address reuse. So whether or not the post mix spending is really kind of really there really is address reuse there. We've gotten a little bit of a better privacy tool from this as a result of the disclosure. So I mean, in the end, users benefit again, which is great to see.
It really is, and I think that's something that it gets lost in the Maxi mentality is that, like, just because there was an issue, unlike with Wasabi, where issues have been reported numerous times, they really haven't changed anything to prevent them. So, like, it's always good to see teams working together to address problems or potential problems, and then making the user experience simplified so that they don't encounter this is imperative. You know what I mean? And I think it's great what's being done with that, and that's a positive thing. Whereas a lot of other teams have typically just ignored. I mean, but to be fair, I mean Satoshi ignored heated warnings as well, and that's what gave us VOI. And so I guess the arrogance does run deep in the maximalists who for whatever fucking reason believe that the world is perfect in an immaculate conception. So there's that. But
yeah, we're never going to be able to convince those people. But
I think what it's going to take though, honestly, is I think the next time Bitcoin really does a huge drop, you're going to see a lot of people clearing out. I think a lot of people are truly tired of being cheerleaders. And after a while, the cheerleading mentality does change. And I hope it shifts. I hope people become more aware of these types of things. And, I just hope people will take a moment to learn, that's the other problem is that more people worry about, number go up instead of what number means. You know what I mean? But, again, you get all types when you start talking about unregulated markets and, all that kind of stuff. So, again, I want to thank you for your time, Ergo, for coming on. Do you have anything else that you would like to show? I want to open it up for some more questions if they have any. And then otherwise, I want to kind of wrap it up. And so you can get on with your life and I can get on with mine for the evening. Because I know it's Friday. And again, thank you again for coming on and dealing with the patients from yesterday.
No, man, it's all good. I appreciate you having me on. I've gotten a bunch of requests to do this, so I've been happy to finally get the chance to do a screen share and show some of this stuff because I talk about it and it's hard. It's better to visualize. So
it really
I really
is.
Appreciate you taking the time to invite me, and I like what you've been doing with the base podcast, getting some of the basics down for people that might otherwise not know. And thanks to the hash rate guys for having us on.
Oh yeah, definitely. So anybody on chat right now that wants to ask questions, feel free to ask away. I'm going to leave it open for about 5 more minutes, and then I think we're going to close it down because, well, it's Friday night and everybody wants to go do other things. No offense to everyone, but, Mix Don't Peel, best death song. I don't know if Ergo's a deadhead, so he may be. I don't know. Are you? Are you a deadhead?
I'm not a deadhead. That's
okay.
Before my time, Nixops.
Well, so I would say my favorite dead song, depending on era, would be. Ooh, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Brown Eyed Women, and even like Ramble on Rose. But if you're going to talk about Ramble on Rose, it's got to be when Brent Midland was the keyboardist. Yeah, Scarlet Begonias is a good one. Sublime covered it, and a lot of people didn't know that, but there's that. Modern day jam bands, Tedeschi Trucks, and yeah, anything, Dickie Betts, people like that. Some My Morning Jacket. Anyway, does anyone have questions for Ergo that applies to what we just went over? Not about jam band stuff. You can tweet at me about that. I love the people that join the chats though. There's some interesting characters. But yeah, I mean, so I guess if there's anything else you want to talk about, where can people reach you? At Ergo BTC on Twitter, correct, and on Telegram.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Telegram. I'm on Twitter. I'm lurking in the Samurai Telegram chats most of the time. A little easier to find there than on Twitter. So if you can't get me on Twitter, pop into one of those chats. And say hi, ask questions. Anybody around. Very helpful community. If I'm not around, somebody will definitely try to help you out.
And you know what it is? It is a very helpful community. There is some, kind of stigmatism with that group of people like, oh, you're just a bunch of assholes. And that's kind of true. We all are. But, like if you have a legitimate question, people are going to help you. But, like if it's repeat offenders of people that have been helped numerous times, a lot of times there may be a little bit of shit talking. But, it just comes with the territory of being in a group. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people really do get discouraged. I mean, like, in true sense of the cypherpunk movement. I mean, shit, in our mid late '90s, IRC, Usenet, everything else, including the '80s, it was a little terse to everybody. You know what I mean? It wasn't all like kumbaya and shit. It was like, fuck you, are you social engineering or what? And like with good reason. You know what I mean? Like people have to really consider those factors. But the group has done really, even since I've been joined in, I don't remember, I think it was in January, February, I started kind of looking in and doing more research on that stuff, including Wasabi and Samurai. Very helpful, and everyone will definitely do their digging and help you as best they can. One thing I wanted to comment on was a question someone asked, what's up with CB radios? CB radios are great for sending Bitcoin transactions. If you're going to send them, there's no data protocol. You can use Morse code. You can span channels. CB radios, unlike ham, can be used for commercial operations and pecuniary interests. Unlike ham, which ham you can get in trouble for, I know personally, for utilizing pecuniary interest and or commercial intent over the spectrum without blessing. So keep that in mind. Oh, yeah. So literally,
Did you just quote that from the law?
yeah, something like that. You might say I'm versed in it, dealing with some of the radio shit. Hetty Wook wants to know any future podcast plans. Mentioned peeps have been reaching out. He wants to know what.
I think I'm going to do bottom shelf Bitcoin. Let me get through this Twitter hack analysis, and I think I'm going to do bottom shelf Bitcoin with Josh. He asked a while ago, and he's been pretty patient with me. I'm not a big doing podcast fan, but I really am a fan of Nixops, so that's why I'm here.
Well, I appreciate you coming on for that. I mean, I really do. Like I'm not used to this content creation shit, to like dealing with this and all of that's been like really odd for me. So it's all new. So I thank you for taking time out of your day to come on to this. 2 days now. So
absolutely, no, I loved it. It was great to chat. I don't get to talk to Bitcoiners much. I'm a bit of a recluse, so it's good to talk to somebody that doesn't have weaponized autism.
Oh, hold on, you're wrong, sir. I am a B-tard. I do have weaponized autism. Just my weaponized autism is slightly different. I mean, being honest, like half the people in certain groups are quite literally fans of 4chan for good reason, against censorship resistant, because it literally is, as far as the ClearNet is concerned, one of the last bastions of hope for a near censorship-free environment. I mean, yeah, they pull off the CP and stuff, but it protects anonymity from the door. You know what I mean? Like, there's no account system unless you choose to go through the ridiculous means to do it. Instead, they're like, yo, be anon.
Be anon.
Yeah, just be anon. Like, fuck you, just be anon. Pastime Wookie, or Pastime Kramer says, hey, you need to do more talks. Eddie Wook gave the Satan rock on sign. So yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close this up, Ergo? Or
no, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, man. Thanks again for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Telegram chats. It's the best way to find us. And ask questions. Always ask questions. Do your own research.
But ask questions. People will help. But what I love is that whenever I say something, and I'm sure you get this a lot too, when people are like, hey, what about this? And you're like, yes, this happened. And then they're like, can you explain it to me? It's like, can you not use Google, or actually, can you not use DuckDuckGo? You know what I'm saying? Spend some time to do some reading. You know what I mean? Like, I think that in this day and age of immediate gratification, people have really lost the insight to do any research on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've done this kind of stuff from time to time where I just hop down a side hobby kind of rabbit hole. Hopefully I don't come out of this one because I really do enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing my own research. Hopefully we can see some more of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We're gonna stop the evening. Everyone have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Remember, mix your shit. Don't be an idiot. Don't use wasabi. Otherwise, if you have questions about the validity of it, again, rewatch this video. Ergo does a great job of doing some peel backs and showing that peel chain and understanding what the peel chain means.